You are not living life. Life is living through you. Stop for just a moment and really let that sink in. Everything you've been taught since childhood tells you the opposite, that you are the one making choices, pushing through obstacles, and shaping a story called my life. But what if that's the greatest illusion of all? Imagine this. Every thought you've ever had, every relationship you've ever entered, every triumph and tragedy you've endured, isn't simply happening to you, it's happening as you. What if your existence is not a private drama but the way life itself experiences being human? Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant explorers of the human psyche, uncovered this unsettling truth after decades of studying thousands of people. He saw patterns that were too precise to be random. He recognized that life is not just a sequence of events. It is a psychological process with a purpose that is so simple. Most people miss it entirely. Life is the journey of making the unconscious conscious. And everything, absolutely everything, is in service of that process. Think about your own history for a moment. That painful childhood memory you try to forget, it still shapes your decisions today until you bring it into awareness. The person who irritates you so deeply, they're not simply a problem in your life. They are reflecting back to you a hidden piece of yourself that you don't want to see. Even your strangest dreams, your recurring health issues, or the uncanny coincidences you brush off as weird luck, all of them are the unconscious trying to reach you. This is what Jung discovered. Life is not a meaningless grind between birth and death. It is a consciousness-making machine. You are not the bystander. You are the very process itself. Let's step back and look at history to see how this plays out on the grand stage. Take Abraham Lincoln. To the world, he was a president, a strategist, a speaker, but underneath that role, he wrestled with profound depression. Many historians call it a weakness. Jung would call it something else, the unconscious forcing its way to the surface, demanding that Lincoln grow beyond the ego's need for comfort. Out of that darkness came the depth and humility that enabled him to hold a fractured nation together. His suffering wasn't an obstacle to his life's purpose. It was the very crucible in which his destiny was forged. Or look at Steve Jobs. His story begins with abandonment. Being adopted as an infant. That wound fueled his perfectionism, his volatility, and his relentless drive. But from a Jungian perspective, the adoption wasn't simply an unfortunate event. It was the unconscious creating the conditions through which Jobs would pursue connection, beauty, and meaning, ultimately producing technology that would connect billions of people. His personal myth of being the outsider became the engine of his creative genius. Nelson Mandela provides another powerful example. 27 years in prison could have broken him, and by the ego's standards, those years were wasted. But Mandela's self, the deeper center of consciousness, was at work, shaping him into someone capable of embodying forgiveness, reconciliation, and wisdom on a scale the world had never seen. What looked like tragedy was actually the self expanding him beyond the ego's narrow agenda. These lives show us something extraordinary. The events that feel most painful, humiliating, or senseless are often the very moments when life is doing its deepest work through us. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole. Not perfect, not successful, not even good in the moral sense, but whole. And here's where it becomes deeply personal. If your life feels chaotic, if your story feels fragmented, if your heart aches under the weight of loss or confusion, you are not doing something wrong. You are right where life needs you to be. The ego, the I you identify with, might be screaming that things are falling apart. But the self, the larger, wiser center of your psyche, knows that something is breaking open so that more of you can come into consciousness. This is why Jung insisted that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most people live and die under the spell of fate, never realizing that what they call bad luck or failure is actually life nudging them toward awareness. They miss the deeper purpose because they're looking for happiness, success, or certainty, but life isn't offering those rewards. Life is offering wholeness. So the real question is not, how do I get life under control? The real question is, what is life trying to become conscious of through me right now? This shift in perspective changes everything. Suddenly, suffering isn't meaningless, it's labor pain for a new level of consciousness. Relationships stop being random, they become mirrors revealing your hidden truths. Even death itself takes on a different light, not as the end, but as the way consciousness explores transformation. When you understand this, you stop fighting the current. You begin to live more deeply, more attentively, more courageously, because you see that every single moment, whether joyous or devastating, is sacred. It is life experiencing itself through the unique lens of you. 1. Life has a structure. Carl Jung came to a radical realization after working with thousands of patients: nothing in life is random. What looks like coincidence or chaos on the surface is actually part of a single process with one purpose: making the unconscious conscious. Every person you meet, every situation you face, every triumph and every breakdown is serving that hidden goal. Think about it. A childhood wound creates an unconscious complex that drives your behavior for decades, until you finally recognize it. That person who constantly triggers you is not your enemy. They are a mirror showing you the part of yourself you've tried to deny. The strange dream that keeps haunting you. The physical symptom that won't go away. The uncanny synchronicity that feels too precise to be chance. Each is a doorway through which the unconscious tries to speak. History is filled with powerful figures who illustrate this dynamic. Winston Churchill, for example, struggled with what he called his black dog of depression. To the outside world, it looked like weakness, but Jung would say that Churchill's depression was not meaningless, it was the unconscious demanding to be acknowledged. And without that struggle, Churchill might not have developed the depth and resilience that allowed him to lead Britain through its darkest hour. Steve Jobs offers another case. His early abandonment complex, being adopted, drove both his relentless perfectionism and his volatility. On the surface, it created turmoil in his personal relationships and career. But at a deeper level, it was the unconscious pushing him toward innovation, toward creating devices that connected people in ways he himself longed for. Jung's point is clear: life isn't just happening. It is structured, intelligent, and purposeful. The challenges we face are not accidents, they are invitations to become more conscious of who we really are. 2. Ego and self, the tension that creates life. In Jungian psychology, the ego is the narrow band of consciousness, the I we identify with. It's your name, your personal story, the part of you that craves safety, approval, and control. The self, on the other hand, is far larger. It includes both your conscious and unconscious mind, a totality that is infinitely wiser than the ego. This is why the two are often at odds. The ego wants comfort, while the self demands growth. The ego wants to fit in, while the self insists on individuation. The ego avoids suffering at all costs, while the self understands that suffering is the crucible where consciousness is born. Every major turning point in life is essentially the self speaking to the ego. An unexpected opportunity is the self opening a door the ego didn't even know existed. A devastating crisis is the self dismantling an ego structure that has become too small. A painful loss is the self tearing away what the ego is clinging to, forcing it to let go. World leaders often embody this tension. Take Nelson Mandela. His ego wanted the normal comforts of a family man and lawyer. But the self pushed him toward a prison cell, an experience of immense suffering that transformed him into a symbol of reconciliation and resilience. Without that clash between ego's desire for safety and the self's demand for truth, Mandela could never have become a global icon of freedom. Another striking example is Elon Musk. His ego seeks recognition and influence, but his self keeps thrusting him into risky ventures, space exploration, electric cars, neural technology. Each failure, from rocket explosions to production delays, looks like ego's nightmare. But from Jung's perspective, these breakdowns are the self-shattering limitations, pushing him to expand beyond what seems possible. The lesson is that the drama between ego and self isn't a mistake or a distraction. That very tension is life itself, the engine of transformation that shapes who we become. 3. Life as a story, the personal myth. We don't actually live events, we live the meaning we attach to those events. The unconscious is always writing a script for us, what Jung called the personal myth. This hidden story determines how we interpret everything that happens. Some people live the victim's myth. Life is against me. No matter what happens, Every setback feels like proof that the universe is hostile. Others embody the martyr's myth. I exist to suffer for others. Success or joy is dismissed, because sacrifice is the only role the unconscious allows. Then there's the seeker's myth. The answer is always out there. No matter how much is achieved, fulfillment is postponed, because the unconscious insists the prize lies just beyond reach. The problem is that these myths aren't consciously chosen. They run in the background, pulling us into familiar roles and even casting supporting characters. That's why someone with an abandonment myth repeatedly attracts partners who leave. It's not fate. It's the unconscious staging the same play again and again. History offers clear examples. Richard Nixon lived out a paranoid myth that enemies were always conspiring against him. That narrative drove the Watergate scandal and ultimately destroyed his presidency. In contrast, Mahatma Gandhi embraced a martyr's myth in service of liberation, consciously turning his suffering into a story of moral power that reshaped an empire. Jung's insight is liberating. Once you see the story, you can rewrite it. You stop being an unconscious character and become a conscious co-author. This doesn't mean discarding the myth. It means shaping it in a way that leads toward wholeness rather than repetition. As Jung put it, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But who you are is not a fixed entity, it's a story still unfolding, waiting for you to participate with awareness. 4. Individuation, the real purpose of life. Jung argued that life is not aiming at happiness or worldly success, it's aiming at wholeness. The true purpose of existence is individuation, the lifelong process of integrating all the parts of the psyche into a complete self. The journey usually begins with building the ego. In the first half of life, people focus on achievements, careers, and social roles. This is necessary, but it's not enough. Eventually, the structure of the ego begins to crack. The so-called midlife crisis is really the moment when the ego can no longer carry the weight of the soul's demand for growth. The next stage is facing the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we've rejected. To the ego, these traits look ugly or dangerous. But Jung believed they are often the source of our deepest creativity and vitality. Winston Churchill, for example, wrestled with his dark moods and inner demons. But by confronting them, he drew the strength to lead Britain through war. After the shadow comes the encounter with the anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine. This stage usually plays out in relationships, where we project these inner figures onto partners. Bill Clinton's turbulent marriage and career scandals, for instance, exposed not only personal failings but also the struggle of a man wrestling with unintegrated aspects of his psyche. On the other hand, leaders like Barack Obama show how balancing inner masculine and feminine energies, rational decisiveness with emotional empathy, can create a more integrated presence on the world stage. Finally comes the recognition of the self, a center larger than ego. Shadow, anima, or animus, the self holds all opposites, transcending the narrow perspective of the ego. Figures such as the Dalai Lama embody this stage. His presence goes beyond personal ambition or role. He radiates the sense of being anchored in something greater than individuality. Individuation is not a straight line. It's a spiral. Each crisis, each relationship, each dream brings us back to the same themes at a deeper level. Life keeps circling us through these stages until more of the unconscious is made conscious. The goal isn't to become perfect. It's to become whole. 5. Universal consciousness. Life is awareness knowing itself. Through decades of studying dreams and synchronicities, Jung concluded that beneath the personal psyche lies a collective unconscious shared by all humanity. Symbols, myths, and archetypes appear across cultures not because they're copied, but because they emerge from this shared reservoir of meaning. From this perspective, your personal life isn't just your own private story, it's a lens through which universal consciousness experiences itself. You are not a person occasionally having spiritual experiences. You are spirit, having the full experience of being human. This is why suffering, limitation, and even death are not meaningless. They are how infinite awareness learns what it's like to be finite. Take Franklin D. Roosevelt, stricken with polio. His paralysis could have been seen as pure misfortune. But through his disability, he embodied resilience and became the leader who guided America through the Great Depression and World War II. His suffering wasn't just personal, it was consciousness discovering strength through limitation. Consider Nelson Mandela again. His 27 years in prison weren't simply wasted decades. They became the crucible in which universal consciousness experienced endurance, forgiveness, and transformation. Through his body and his story, something larger than personal ambition revealed itself to the world. Even mortality itself serves this purpose. When Steve Jobs was diagnosed with cancer, he said that death was very likely the single best invention of life, because it clears out the old to make way for the new. In Jungian terms, death is not the end of consciousness, but consciousness experiencing what it means to let go of form. When you understand life this way, every moment, whether joyful or painful, becomes sacred. It's not just you going through experiences, it's life, or universal mind, coming to know itself through the particular lens of your existence. 6. Life in practice. The practical shift Jung invites is subtle but powerful. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the deeper question is, "What is trying to become conscious through me?" This simple reframing transforms every experience from punishment into process, from accident into opportunity. Suffering, then, is no longer meaningless. It is consciousness struggling to be born. Abraham Lincoln, who endured repeated failures, depression, and the unimaginable loss of children, grew into a leader defined not by comfort but by wisdom forged in suffering. His pain was not wasted, it was the raw material through which greater awareness emerged. Every relationship can also be seen as a mirror. The people who inspire us reflect our undeveloped potential, while those who provoke or wound us reflect our disowned shadow. Consider John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev during the Cold War. Their tense exchanges weren't just geopolitical maneuvers, they mirrored back to each other their own fears, insecurities, and projections. Through this clash, the world was forced to confront the unconscious drive toward destruction, and to glimpse the possibility of restraint. Finally, Jung emphasized that nothing in life is surplus. Every joy, every conflict, every coincidence is serving individuation, the process of becoming whole. Even setbacks that appear disastrous are part of this unfolding. When Angela Merkel faced crises, from financial collapse to refugee waves, each tested not just her political skill but her capacity to integrate patience, resilience, and humanity into her leadership. The message is clear: no moment is wasted. Every experience is an invitation to greater consciousness. 7. A new attitude toward life. When you begin to see life as the dialogue between ego and self, mistakes stop looking like failures. They become part of a larger conversation. A crisis is no longer just a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The self pushing the ego beyond its limits. This shift in perspective changes how we engage with the world. Instead of clinging to control or blaming circumstances, we learn to participate fully without being consumed. To live deeply, but not be trapped by the drama. Look at someone like Barack Obama. His presidency was filled with crises: the financial collapse, racial unrest, global conflicts. To the ego, these looked like disasters threatening legacy and reputation. But from the perspective of the self, each challenge was a breakthrough, forcing him to integrate patience, negotiation, and vision into his leadership. His calm under pressure was not detachment, it was the practice of engaging fully while refusing to be swallowed by fear. Or consider Nelson Mandela again. Decades in prison didn't break him, they transformed him. What could have been seen as wasted years became the crucible of his individuation. He walked out not bitter but whole, embodying forgiveness and authority that the world recognized as sacred. When you understand that every moment is consciousness experiencing itself, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Even the smallest experiences, a conversation, a setback, a moment of joy, are sacred. They are not interruptions in life, they are life itself unfolding. You are not failing, you are not lost, you are playing your part perfectly in a process far greater than the ego can grasp. You are not just one fragile person wandering through chaos, you are life itself, experiencing what it means to be human through the singular lens of you. The real question was never, does my life have meaning? The deeper question is, how am I allowing life to become conscious of itself through me? Every joy, every struggle, every heartbreak carries that possibility. As you reflect on this, I invite you to pause and see your life not as a problem to solve but as a sacred unfolding. And I want to leave you with a prayer inspired by the words of the Buddha. May all beings be free from fear and suffering. May those touched by war find peace. May those struck by disaster find safety. May those living in darkness discover the light within. And may every heart remember its true nature, boundless, compassionate, whole. This prayer is not only for distant strangers, it's for you. 2. In a world shaken by storms, violence, and uncertainty, may you know that your life is not an accident. Your existence is precious because it is life itself becoming aware. Right here, right now. So I ask you, what story are you living? Can you see the myth that has shaped you? And can you imagine rewriting it with awareness? I would love to hear your reflections. Share them in the comments below. And if this exploration speaks to something in you, I invite you to subscribe to Dharma Veins. Here, we walk this path together, learning from Jung, from the Dharma, and from the wisdom hidden inside our own lives. Because individuation, the path of becoming whole, is not a journey we travel alone. It is a journey where consciousness meets itself in each of us. Remember, you are not just in life. You are life, and life is awakening through you.